So, hello everyone, and welcome to the pre-Christmas edition of Small Business Talk Australia. A warm welcome to my co-hosts Stephen Brown, Julie Sanderson, and our guest for today, Peter Watson.
Hello.
Now, for those of you that have, this is the first time that you've watched us, why have you not watched us before? That's the question that you need to ask yourself. Just for everyone's, I guess, purpose of what we do, we're all small business owners in this blab. I am a debt collector. I do a lot of business consulting and international debt collection. Julie does marketing and branding and is our little branding guru over there. Stephen is our lawyer, our legal eagle. Between him and Suzanne Brown as well, who is obviously off screen and probably poking him with sticks or something. And what else is there? Peter Watson, who is our guest today, who is from Impact Facilitation. So, welcome. Now, can we all hear each other?
Wonderful.
Right, okay. So it would appear that, Julie, you can't see me and you can't see Peter, but I can see you. And as I'm recording it, it's all good. So we'll go with the flow. All right?
Lovely.
So
this is very romper roomish.
I know, it's a bit weird. I think as each episode goes along, we just tend to get a bit more blasé and a bit more casual with it all. But there we go. So, Peter, welcome to the madness that is our blab.
It's lovely to be here.
You probably won't say that by the time you finish, mate, to be honest. But you never know. So before we carry on with some deep and meaningful questions, would you mind just explaining to everyone who you are, what you do, and how good you are at doing it?
Okay, Peter, so I run a business called Impact Facilitation. We focus really around working with teams. So I don't know if you've probably been in a team. Some teams you absolutely love being in. Other teams you wish you'd never been there. And so my job is to come in and make sure your team experience is a really positive and productive one. So that's what I do day to day. I really love doing it too.
Right. Okay. So, Suzanne, I know you can hear us, mate. Would you mind fielding the questions that we get onto the blab? I'm guessing, Peter, the fact that you've got Kiwi Peter 1968. I'm guessing
that gives away a lot. Yes, I'm a Kiwi.
Oh, there we go. Okay. So Juanita, yes, there we go. He's a Kiwi. Won't hold it against him.
It's good. It's a good year to be a Kiwi for a change.
Well, yeah, there we go.
Especially
So
with the cricket.
Yeah, well, no, what's cricket? I'm not unsure what that game is.
You can ask Jerry. Jerry's got some good links, mate. He'll sort you out. He's got it all down pat.
It's a 5-day game that Kiwis normally lose.
Yeah, well, there we go. All right, okay. So before we started with the blab and we were filling in some time while you're sorting your connections out, and I, for one, I've never been a massive fan of team building. And I don't know, maybe it's just my nature and who I am. The Grinch. I hate everyone. But why is it important for businesses, large or small, to have good teams?
I'm like you. The team building exercises I'm not a real fan of. They can depend. Some people love them, some people hate them. I'm not really a fan of team building when you're doing all those funny games. What I am a fan of is working out how to get a team to function in a way that is 80% enjoyable, not enjoyable all the time, but 80% enjoyable and 80% productive, because I think there's always some moments when you're not productive either. So how do you get the balance between being a part of a group of people where you can function at a higher level that you can operate by yourself? So really, really good teams do that. Really bad teams, you're better off being by yourself in an office and hiding from everybody. So it really depends on, are you able to get this group of people to function at a higher level than they could by themselves. And you need to be able to say yes to that, to say it's worthwhile doing as a team. Not everything should be done as a team. But when people bring value to that experience and you go away going, actually, I really love being at work today. Actually, I got a lot done today, and that our organisation is better off because of our team functioning, that's when it's worthwhile having a team and developing a team. And they don't happen automatically. If you ask people, everybody's got a great team experience in the background, and it didn't happen accidentally. Somebody put the effort into making it work. And normally it takes a fair amount of work to get in to make it really function at a really, really high level.
So what makes a good team?
Well, I talk about the 7 things you've got to do, but basically there's a people component and there's a task component. You've got to have some of the things where you've got relationships going, that's the people side, and you've got to have the actual doing the task side as well. And so my experience, because my experience is both in non-profit and in profit organisations, as a really general rule, non-profits often do the people stuff really quite well. They often are terrible at some of the task stuff about holding people accountable and hard conversations. Businesses often do the task stuff really well and can be a little bit weak in the people side. But great teams are able to do both of those at the right time so that people go away being held accountable but also respected. I think a good team experience, you come away going, I did better in that team than I would have done by myself.
So it was quite interesting, Julie, sort of like nodding her going, yep. So you were saying this before that, when you were doing team building for Telstra. So you've been also involved in doing that side of things as well for a bit. Like, if you take Telstra, say, as an example, and I use that as a cheap example because you just said you were doing team building for Telstra, what were the key issues that they had to deal with? When you look at, say, like what Pete was saying with, like, the task side of things and the people side of things, what was Telstra's issue that you had to manage?
It was very much a double, as Peter has said. It very much depended on the management in that line, whether they had the people skills. It also depended very much on the legacy of who you had in the teams, and that was the discussion I had earlier about starting off with the right mix or with a better mix will make it a lot easier to keep moving forward. But then an organisation like Telstra has got an enormous amount of processes and procedures. Are you getting bad feedback with me?
I'm getting some
echo. Yeah.
Okay. So that quite often the processes and procedures would take the lead, which was usually to the detriment.
Okay. So, Peter, you've got these 7 disciplines that you talk about. Can you just walk us through what these 7 disciplines are and how they sort of factor into what you do as part of your business? Okay.
So I use the word discipline to indicate it takes work. These are things that for some of them are very natural for some people, but to actually do all 7 of them is actually really difficult. And my experience is that it's not about any one person doing all 7. It's about the team working out and negotiating who's going to take what role within the team. So the first one I have is that team members need to feel welcome and accepted. Do you feel safe when you go into that team? Not that you're best friends, but if I turn up, people are going to smile at me, respect me. I'm going to basically be welcome into that team. I don't feel like people are talking behind my back all the time. The second thing is that we've got to have a focus on the positive. Look, we get to the things that are going wrong later on, but let's not start our meetings and our teams by harping on what's wrong. Let's focus on what's right to start with. So you've got to have a positivity that comes into that. I'm not into positive thinking or that kind of, you know, ooey-wooey kind of positive stuff, but I am.
I call that woo-woo.
Woo-woo, yeah, I knew there was a word you used, but I am into starting the conversation in a positive way. What's actually gone right rather than what's gone wrong. And then you've got to have a real clarity of what the team is there for. What is actually purpose of your team? And are there people in that meeting who don't need to be there because they actually are not part of that purpose? So that's the kind of people side. You know, do they feel welcome? Do you start positively? Do you know what we're here about? Then you've got to get into some of the hard stuff. Are we understanding what the reality of our situation is? So if our goal is to sell $250,000 worth of product this month, that's our goal. Where are we? If we're a week into the month and we've only sold 10,000, we need to be really real about it. So we start with a question that says, how have we done well? But then we move into the question of, okay, where's the reality right now? Then we need to get into who's going to do what when. So if we know where we're going, if we know where we are, then we can start to do that normal planning stuff about you're agreeing to do this by when, I'm agreeing to do that by when. Now, a lot of people do that really well, but what they don't do is that they don't do the next bit or the next two bits. One, they don't run out of the room and do what they said they're going to do. So they don't take action. People procrastinate. So how do we get around procrastination as a team? And the last one is how do we hold people accountable for what they said they were going to do? Not what we thought they were going to do, but what they actually said they're going to do. In my experience, is if you hold people accountable, you actually go back up to the beginning of the cycle. They want to be in the team because they feel, because they've achieved something. There's no point patting people on the back and saying, gee, you're a wonderful person, you're doing a great job, if they haven't done a great job. Nobody feels good about that. So that's why you've got to have the people and the task working in conjunction with one another. And my experience is you need every member of the team taking one or two of those responsibilities. Some people are really good at accountability. It's not everybody's good, but say if I was at a board meeting just the other day and I had the chairperson say to the board, the CEO, will you do this task by next month? And the CEO said, yeah, I think so. Well, think so is not an agreement. That's meaning I'm not really going to get round to it, but I'm not going to tell you I'm not going to get round to it. And part of my skill was in that meeting to say, can we stop and let's get a firm agreement about what's actually happening. Can you do it? And she said, well, actually, I can't. So I said to the chairperson, are you happy with her saying no? And in the end, he was. So I was good at bringing the agreement into place. So that was the role I played, but other people play other roles. Other people often play the role of making people feel good because I'm not real good at that. But I know it needs to be done. So my skill is to make sure people do that, not that I necessarily, as the leader, do it. So they're the 7 disciplines.
So is it a right thing to say that a mindset, you've got to have the right mindset? If you're going to be going in and you're going to be teaching either line managers, GMs, whoever, CEOs, how to make your team more efficient, one of the biggest things that you come across, is it mindsets? You know, you'll see how people have like preconceived perceptions of how they want to run their team. You can't, how dare you come in here and make all these changes?
Yeah, it's about somebody recognising that maybe they don't see what somebody else sees. You know, talking about cricket before, one of the things they talk about when somebody bowls really fast, you actually don't have a reaction time to respond in time to it. It's all the training you've had, all the practice you've done to know that when the ball comes out of the hand, it's going to go to a certain place. If you're an expert, you can see that, but the rest of us can't even see the ball. So part of my expertise as a team facilitator is I can see those things and help other people to begin to see it. It's learning to say, maybe you're a task person, you don't see people's stuff. I'm not telling you have to do it, but you have to see it, so that you can work out who's going to do it.
But I'll just go back to my previous point. If you come across line managers that have that perception of like, I've been managed by a team for 4 years, whatever it may be. That you're going to get people that immediately put these barriers up. How do you break those barriers down? How do you convince them to see that your way of thinking is the right way and is the more efficient way to help them get
So
better?
I actually go through the 7 steps. So if people don't feel safe in that environment, they're never going to share and they're never going to listen. So that's where team building might be useful if we have to do something to build some trust in the room so that we can have a conversation. So every member of the team can say this is a good or a bad experience.
Okay,
so
let me stop you there. How do you build trust within the room?
Well, you've got to build it with the leader before you get into the room. If I'm facilitating, I've got to have the trust with the leader before I get into the room. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So I work with the leader to start with before I get anywhere near the team. And trust is built by listening to people, hearing their experience, and being able to bring value into that conversation so they know what I'm talking about. But I don't go in telling them that I know everything. I go in with questions to start with.
It's funny actually you should say that, because when I go and consult to a business, I've got a bit of cardboard and it just says the word why. And a question mark on it.
Yep.
That's all it says, because I sit down and be like, oh yeah, well this is how we do our process, this is how we send our invoices, this is how we do that, and we're doing that for 10 years. I won't say anything and I'll just point to the sign. Pointing to the sign until they actually start talking.
Yep.
And actually, and realizing, oh yeah, actually, maybe this isn't probably the best way that we could do things. And then the sign comes off, and then we can have a decent conversation. But I appreciate what you're saying about you've got to sort of deal with that leader, because when I go and talk to a business, I'm normally dealing with people like the collection managers or the credit managers, and again, they have that preconceived perception of, this is how I'm going to run my team. This is how I'm going to run my department. I mean, you've got to sort of get that trust.
Well, I was talking to another board, a guy who asked me to come and have a conversation the other day. He's another board member. And I just listened long enough that I could give him one simple, practical thing that he could go away and do. Because my integrity is built on giving simple ideas that actually make a difference. If they don't make a positive difference, why should he trust me? Trust is built on actually achieving outcomes. So I can't go in and say, look, I've got this qualification, I've got 20 years of experience, I've done this, I've done that. I go in and say, tell me about your experience. What's good? What's been challenged? What are you good at? What are you struggling at? Is there anything I can do to encourage you and help you and build you up, and maybe give you one or two ideas? So it takes a long time.
Okay. Well, obviously, we're sort of limited for our time here this evening, but I'd be interested to know how the process works from very, very sort of like succinctly from start to finish. You come along, you knock on the front door, they let you in, you sit down, and you start doing your stuff. What's the process from A to Z? Okay,
so the process is, if it's the leader, then I ask the questions until they ask me the question, which opens the door to say, here's an idea. And I just simply outline the framework of the 7 disciplines. And I start to say, how good are you at creating a safe place? How good are you at making agreements with people? And I try to work out where they are and encourage them. And until I get them to the point and going, actually, we're good at those 3 and crap at those 4, then I really can't go in to have a conversation with the team. Once I've got the leader who understands the basic 7 ideas, then I can go into the team and have the same conversation. So we would normally spend half a day explaining the 7 ideas and helping them assess their team, where their team is at, and getting agreement as a team where they're at. and then starting to look at practical things they could do for each of those 7 areas. They then would normally set up a plan for their next couple of weeks, and I would come back a couple of weeks later, sit in their team, observe their team, see what they're doing, try to continue to build trust that I can speak into that, and then we identify where one of their weaknesses, and we do something around that weakness. I'll give you an analogy that I've found really, really helpful. Can you remember those old kind of buckets that have the slats? You know, not the plastic buckets, but the wooden buckets with the slats, okay? So imagine you've got 7 slats, and one of the slats is a bit lower than the others, okay? And you're pouring water into the bucket, and 6 of the slats are really high, but one of them's quite low. You can only fill the bucket up to the level of the lowest slat. Doesn't matter how good your other 6 are, if one of them's really low, you're never going to fill up the bucket. So what we try to do is identify where that low slat is and give strategies around increasing that, and then leveraging out of the positivity of that result, we then can look at the other ones and start to bring them all up.
What if?
So I do both the team, sit in the team, feedback, but then I go back and I coach the leader by themselves, because you've got to have the leader who's got to have enough safe time for them to start to reflect on their own leadership experience as well.
Okay. Do you remember a game show called The Weakest Links?
Yes.
What happens when you identify that weakest link? And as much as you try and bring them up, they just don't have the capacity to get to that.
Firstly, it's not me who identifies the weakest link. I actually don't care if they get the right one. What I want them to do is identify for them as a team what they believe the weakest link is.
Right.
And then we work in there. It might be it takes a month or 2 before we actually get to the one that's what I think is the right one. But the issue is not what I think. The issue is how they are operating as a team. And so they learn to look at the team from these 7 disciplines.
Right. Okay. But by the comment that I made about being the weakest link, I mean, at the end of the day, you're going to have to report your findings to someone who is the person that said, right, Peter, I want you to come along and sort my team out. So in a way, you're still identifying the weakest link. Now,
I would never go into I would say no to somebody who said, you're coming in and sort my team out. It's not my job. I can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't fix other people's problems. They have to fix them themselves.
But even by working with a team and identifying that one that is that lower slat, you're providing that feedback to the person that has engaged your services.
Yes.
Now, once you've already declared, it's not your issue, it's not your problem to go and fix the fundamental issues of their team. In my head, you're still identifying and passing that feedback on. So to the person that's that has employed you to facilitate their team, they might get the impression that is the person X is the weakest link. So how do you then get around that to make sure that they're not going to take the information that you get and start using that as a way to either performance manage them out of the business?
Yeah, so you're identifying the person as a weakest link. That may sometimes be the case. My experience is that more often it's a process that is the weakest link. That if you identify the processes, the reality is there is always some people you've got to get off the team. Not every team, but occasionally you've got to get some people off the team. But firstly, you've got to make sure that it's not the process of how the team functions that's the problem. So, for example, you might have somebody who spits the dummy. They yell and scream, they stand up, they do all that behaviour that is a performance management, and you might have to performance manage them out. But that could be a result of the fact that people are making agreements that they're not being held accountable to, or they don't feel safe in the room. or all people do is criticise them. So if you deal with the processes first, you may very well find that the bad behaviour goes away.
Right.
So I would first start with process, and then we start identifying. As part of it, if we identify, say, this is not a very safe place to be, and we make an agreement about how we're going to do that, and then people don't do what they said they're going to do, then you might have to performance manage them out because they're not doing what they said they would do.
Right.
But I start with process, not people.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, got to ask this question. Obviously, you're a bit passionate about what you do, and good on you for doing it. So, what are the best things about what you do? What gives you that fizz?
Because I think there are two things that really set people alive. Okay, one is that they feel safe. Secondly, they've achieved something in their life. I don't think anybody feels good if they don't achieve really positive outcomes in their life. Whether you're a truck driver who gets your truck on time, whether you're a receptionist who answers all your phone calls within 3 calls and you're really polite to the rude people, or whether you're a lawyer who wins a case, every one of us needs to go home at night feeling as though we contributed. And really well-functioning teams help people contribute. And then they actually can go home and they can actually be a nicer person at home as well. I don't think it's easy to be a nice person at home or in the society if you hate being at work, because it's such a large part of our life. So I see it as a very holistic thing. And I often hear from people, they learnt something in the team that they went home and applied at home, and it fits something at home, because it's exactly the same principle. Exactly the same.
Yeah, I mean, you make a very valid point. I mean, especially, in my corporate history, you have a bad day at work. What are you going to do? You get in the car, you pick up your wife or your partner, you go home, and you both bitch and moan about your day in the office, and then you get home and and it just tends to leach into your private life. So I have to admit, actually, both me and my wife, because we were working in relatively close proximity to each other, I used to go and pick her up, and we had a rule that we used to bitch and moan about our horrible days in the office, going down the M2. Then as soon as we got home, then that's it. There was no more talk about work. So it's, if you want to bitch and moan, do it in the car. Don't bring it home with you.
Yeah, remember my basic principle. 80% of the time, enjoy it. 20% is just bloody hard work. You're going to have bad days. 1 in 5 might be a bad day. But if 80% of the time you're productive, you're basically enjoying what you're doing, then I think that sets you up.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So if that's the good things about your business, the flip side, mate, what do you absolutely hate about your business? What are the worst things about your business?
Worst things are invoicing, administration, all the paperwork that goes in behind. I'm not a paperwork person. I can do it, but the more I can hand that off to somebody else, then the happier I am.
Fair enough. All right. So, how long have you been in business for?
5 years.
5 years. Okay. Well, so where do you see your business going in the next 5 years?
I absolutely love what I do, but it would be nice if I could choose which of the contracts I do. It's having freedom. I run a lot of marathons as well. So if I could travel around the world, run marathons 1 a month all around the world, and come home and just cherry pick the contracts I want, there we go. There's an ideal life. 5 years from now, that'd be brilliant. And if I've got other people who can train this stuff as well, that would be awesome.
Now, being a small business owner, and I think like all of us as business owners, we have this feast or famine part of our business. We've got those bits where the contracts rolling week after week, month after week. All of a sudden, it just goes quiet. Do you experience that as well, or have you got a nice firm pipeline of clients?
I have two sides of my business. The side that brings in lots of money and I don't like as much, but it just brings in the money consistently. And there's the side that I really, really love, and that's the side I'm building up more and more.
Yeah.
But I'm lucky. I've always been a really disciplined person with money. And my version of wealth is that you spend less than you earn. And as long as you spend less than you earn and you do that week after week, then you should have money in the bank. You know, I've been a pastor of a church for 20 years, so you don't earn a lot of money being the pastor of a church. But I could stop working today and survive 4 or 5 years because of week after week after week. I give away money and I put more money in the bank than I spend, and that's a wonderful mission to teach people as well. It's not how much you earn; it's how you use your money. And if you do that wisely, then you don't have to get stressed by the ups and downs, because ups and downs are a normal part of life.
But that's it. And obviously, if you've got some money in the bank, beers round Peter, everyone.
Oh.
Now, Stephen, I want to bring you in here because I was when Peter was explaining about certain aspects of his business. One of the things that I sort of wrote down here was about what he can do, or what he does, should I say, could affect employees within a business, and whether there are some legal ramifications on what employees could potentially go against their employer with, because, like, you know, it's based on what Peter has done or what information Peter has given to the person that's engaged him to use his services.
Regrettably, there's always a legal ramification of anything. On the rare occasions, they're positive. Most of the occasions, they're negatives. Since 1853, in at least the UK and Australia, when we abolished indentured slavery, it's really just a question of money. If you have an employee that you no longer want, then under Australian law, you can dismiss them at any time. And if you don't have a reason, you just have to pay them sufficiently well to get rid of them. And if you say that they're redundant, then you've got to pay redundancy. If you don't like them, you're not forced to work with them. But it was interesting to hear what Peter was saying. I've been in a partnership that was truly, truly toxic, and no amount of team building was ever going to get this to work. And no one wanted to be there. Now, people had good relations with some people, but as a group, they just didn't function. And it became because 4 out of the 6 partners just didn't work. And they didn't work in an iron lung. And the partnership's debts increased each year by the degree of overdrawings of those 4 particular partners. And it's very difficult to build up teams when there's so much animosity with the other people. And eventually the whole thing just broke down and people left. But having been in that situation, it was interesting to hear Peter say, well, I don't tell who should go. But I really think that there is a role for change management people to come in and say, you can't work together. You as a group need to split, because otherwise no one's going to go anywhere. And it started out in this particular business I was in. I was a senior associate, and the partner came in, and I had more work than the partner, who was my immediate superior. And he came in one day and said, I want you to give me some work. And I said, well, fine, but I've got to make sure that you don't upset the clients. So I will give you the work, but you have to make sure that you answer to me. Now, he was not impressed by this. And he's sitting on the other side of my desk because he came into my office, and he was saying, well, no, I want you to give me the work. I said, look, it's very simple. I can either give you the work and I'll supervise it, or you can dismiss me. Now, what do you want to do? You're the boss. I've got no call here. And after 15 minutes of total silence, he said, well, and then after the next half an hour of total silence, because I wasn't responding, he got up and left. And then 18 months later, I ended up becoming an equity partner. But I had to then work with this person, but we had no camaraderie whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of legal practices where people who become valuable to the organisation are made partners, and they are then forced to work with others they have no personal or social interest with. And when partnerships make money, there's not a problem. As soon as they stop making money, the toxic soup that has developed over all these years just spews forth. So it's interesting. But and when you're in the partnerships, there's obviously these people that become pets of the partners you don't like, and there's sort of the animosity. So harassment can arise, persecution, and they will vest in legal actions that can arise.
See, actually, harassment was the next thing that I was going to bring up, on whether whatever Peter does and passes that information on, whether that could be construed under Australian law. If it was presented in the wrong way to the wrong person at the wrong time, could it be construed as harassment?
The short answer's got to be theoretically yes. More likely, it could be seen as a constructive dismissal. So if you bring someone into your office and say, you and I can't work together, and you're the boss who makes that statement, whether you like it or not, and whether you think you've done it or not, you have actually dismissed the employee. Because you have told that person they have no future in the organisation. And therefore you have dismissed them, whether you thought you were doing that or not. If you say to someone, I don't think that you have a future in this organisation, you have constructively dismissed them. And the laws here are very, so even if you get a deed of release, if you can establish that that person signed the deed of release under duress, thinking that they had no choice, or believing that to sign it, the employer would give them a reference and they could say they weren't dismissed and that they rather resigned, again, constructive dismissal. And a lot of cases along those lines. Now, many people don't want to take the time, trouble, or effort to challenge it. But that doesn't mean that the rights and obligations aren't there for it to happen.
There we go. Employee work placement law. Minefield. Now, I'm going to switch to Julie in a second, because I'd be interested to know on her thoughts in how your type of business. First of all, I'd be interested to know how you actually go and market your business and brand your business. Then I'm always interested to know what Julie's take is going to be on this, because the information that she's given has been absolute gold to all the people that we've had come along as guests. So she's going to give you some pearlers, mate. I know, no pressure, Julie, but pearlers, mate. Give me pearlers. But I'd be interested to know, Peter, and I guess really this would be one for Stephen as well. I assume when you engage someone, mate, you've got terms and conditions. You've got a contract.
You're talking to me now?
Yes, mate, I'm talking to you.
Yes. Yes, obviously, yep.
Okay, damn, Steve, there could have been a referral there. So, all right. So
they still can be. They might need updating, and they might need to be reviewed.
Or like a boss.
I think I need to talk to you about that. Yeah, I think some clarification around some of that would be good.
10%. All right. Well, see, the interesting thing is, though, you'll be surprised, Peter, how many businesses that I deal with, that Stephen deals with, don't have either up-to-date terms and conditions or or some form of basic contract that says, I'm going to do this, you're going to pay me X, and this is how you're going to pay me.
Well, and I guess that's one of the principles I have, is you've got to have clarity about what you're agreeing to. And unless there's real transparency about that, you're setting yourself up for trouble.
Well,
and whether that's your relationship with your boss or your relationship with a contractor or relationship with another team member, unless you're really clear about those things.
Yeah.
And I would say that there's a little book called The 1 Minute Manager by Blanchard, I think it is. I think that's an absolutely brilliant book in terms of helping people be really, really clear with people about what you're agreeing to. Because you can't hold anybody accountable, and you can't be held accountable unless you're really, really clear about what each person is going to do in that contract.
Fair enough. All right, Julie, I'm going to bring you in here because obviously, as we were saying before we started recording the blab, you've done this sort of thing as well in previous lives. So I'd be interested to know on your thoughts on what marketing and how you can actually market that sort of business effectively. In fact, actually, before you answer that one, Peter, how do you market your business?
There's nothing. I mean, most of the business comes from just word of mouth relationships, which just means you've got to get out there. You've got to be having coffee with people, day after day. You've got to get out, have a coffee with people, hearing their stories. And the secret I find is you're not trying to sell to people all the time. You're into relationships. I do some pro bono work to non-profits. That's just all about adding value into those relationships. And then they come to you later on and go, oh, I've got a problem. And you go, yeah, let's have a conversation about that. Yeah. So it comes from having added value into other people's relationships. It could be that they mention something about at home. It could be a personal relationship. It could be a board relationship. It could be anything. I just look for opportunities just to help people. Yeah. And when you help enough people, I think Zig Ziglar said something like that, didn't he? Help enough people get what they want, and you'll get what you want. It's not a bad principle.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all in agreement. Really, it's value and benefit.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think the days of hardcore selling long gone. So, but there we go. So anyway, Julie, I'm not going to interrupt you anymore, I swear.
I'll try and speak quickly so that we can keep it short. I think that there's two critical factors, that there is a big difference between big business and small business. For team building, or rather team success, for a lot of small businesses, certainly ones that I deal with, they don't know that they don't have a high-performing team. They just assume that this is how everybody's small business runs, with all kinds of ups and downs within the relationships, and then also from a process perspective. So you've got two messages, and the networking that Peter's doing is the perfect way, really, to get to both, but with a different message. So you've got the small business end, where first of all you need to teach them that this kind of interaction with their team is not the norm. Once you've taught them that, then you can go on to show them what you can do. The other side of the coin is the large business, who have lots of examples within their organisations that they can look to and say, this is high performing, this is not performing the way we want it to be. And from those, we need to understand their pain points. So right now, is that business worrying about their bottom line? Is it worrying about high staff turnover, which can then also impact on poor customer experience? All of those probably eventually lead to the bottom line, but they're different processes along the way. And I love that concept that Peter has, that 80% of the time we're happy and 20% of the time we've got issues. Unfortunately, I tend to think that in a lot of organisations it's the exact opposite. So from a marketing perspective, understanding your key potential clients, what their pain points are that are relating to your marketing, relating to your team facilitation and high-performing teams. If you can understand that, you can then include that within that relationship building. And Peter's got it in one. Listening and understanding where they're coming from is the only way you're going to be able to build that trust, because your business is offering something that's very intangible, and those who are currently running the teams think they know what it's all about. And they probably do to a certain extent. So it's just difficult for them to accept an outsider. I can't really offer any more.
So what would be a good platform for marketing to, I guess, Peter's ideal target market?
Look, I know I come back to this every time, but I think LinkedIn for Peter would be a wonderful platform. And look, I can't help it. I love it. But for somebody of your capabilities and the organisations you want to work with, you can have a far easier time targeting the decision makers and then putting out information that they will see, so that there's no longer a question of who can help them, so that you're the expert. The other thing that would be really worthwhile for you, that I would do, is to go down the path of something like Source Bottle, because that's SOURCE bottle. The media are always looking for people to talk about, really any niche within business, and you've got a great niche that you could offer so much. The trust factor built in by being a mouthpiece on media for your industry would be just invaluable.
There's another website as well called, and I think we talked about this last time with Victoria or Kylie from previous episodes. There's another website called Haro, Haro.
That's right, James. Yes.
And that's pretty much like Bottle, but it's a more American based. But same sort of thing. You'll get a digest, an email digest of journalists that are looking for certain subjects, and I've had a couple of bites of the cherry out of Haro, so it might work for you as well. But definitely, I mean, again, thank you, because you've done my LinkedIn course, which I'm truly appreciative of. But yeah, I mean, your decision makers, they're sitting right there on LinkedIn. It's just a matter of finding the right ones that are going to meet your perfect, your ideal target market, your ideal client. So you can do the bit of the get to that position where you can sort of cherry pick.
Thank you. Yeah, good ideas. Appreciate that.
So there we go. All right. I think we're pretty much done. It's been a bit of a weird blab today. We've had issues with Peter getting online. We've had echoes all over the place, but we got there in the end, ladies and gents. Thank you to everyone that is watching and listening. A special thank you to Jerry, who was almost going to be replacement Peter. If you weren't going to make it, bang, I had Jerry lined up there.
Jerry.
Sorry?
I'd like the meeting.
Say again, Steve.
I think we should get Jerry next week.
Do you know what? Jerry, do you want that next week?
Yeah, he's up for it.
Jerry, all right. Jerry, what I need you to do is give me an email address that I can contact you on, or send it to me on Twitter. I'm not a massive fan of Twitter or social media. I can just about do LinkedIn, mate. So, in fact, okay, cool, right. Jerry, are you on LinkedIn? Is that a yes or a no? Go on, Jerry. Tell me you're on LinkedIn.
Got to be on LinkedIn.
Right. Okay. Yep. Need to update. Marvelous. Right. I'll send you a LinkedIn connection request, mate. And then what we'll do, we'll get you in next week, and we'll get you on. And then
we're going worldwide.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going worldwide, baby. Jerry,
a truly international blab.
What topic would Jerry like?
Jerry, you name the topic, mate. This is going to be the last blab before Christmas, mate. Leadership. All right, cool.
Good.
Like it.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, come on, tune in next week because Jerry from Florida, I got that right, didn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Is going to be our international guest, our first international guest. I'm not going to include you, Peter, mate. You're a Kiwi, mate.
I've been living here too long.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Okay. What just happened, Jerry, is that you put your foot in it, mate, and now you're going to be on a blab. So we're going to work out a time and a date. It will probably have to be sort of like 7 p.m. Australian time, which I've got no idea will be in Florida. But it's basically this time, and we'll sort it out next week, maybe. Anyway, my people will talk to your people and stuff. So we'll get it fixed out. So, all right. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much. And I will see you all again next week.
We look forward to
the
Christmas edition.
Yeah.
Christmas edition.
Santa Claus.